Good morning, day, or evening to you, ladies and gentlemen, and anybody who watches this video right now. So, in this vid, I'm gonna be demonstrating how I set up the Cypress test framework with the TypeScript within the Mono repository, where I also have a couple other automation frameworks, those being Playwright and WebDriver.io. And I'm also going to be showing you a couple of examples how this stuff runs, both locally and in CI, just as always. But so if you're interested in other automation frameworks like Playwright or WebDriver.io, you may go and watch this other video which I've recorded specifically for that. So yeah, I'll just leave this link somewhere here. Okay, so the package.json file is like, once again, nothing fancy. We got several commands that open the Cypress for a specific application with a specific test suite and on the specific environment. And we also got a set of commands which is going to run that stuff as well. And then we got one command which is going to clean the previously generated mochawesome reporter results, which is going to trigger the script. And we also got the command which is going to open the report right after the test run, because that one is generated automatically. Also, one important notice is that I will leave all the timecodes in the description of this video, as well as the repository link. So feel free to use that for your own purposes. And remember that these are, to some extent, these are ready-made solutions, which you can implement either in this way, in which it is implemented here, or modify to suit your project needs. But from my 10-year experience, most of the web projects, at least web projects, use little to the same, structure, or should I say, this approach applies to almost all of those, because all projects have multi-environments. Like big companies and medium-sized businesses, they usually have lots of applications. So the application you may consider the application may be considered as not like the mobile app or whatever, but a subsystem. For example, if we take ed tech or online education, these can be so like personal cabinet or like personal account of a teacher. This is one service or app, but it's more understandable when I speak in terms of like microservices or subsystems, or like large component functionality piece. So the next one can be the personal account of teacher, of student, of course, right? Teacher and student. Then we have like the timetable system, which connects those two parties. And then there also can be a subsystem or like separate system or service, which is the actual some online materials or like online book or whatever. I'm actually speaking, from experience, because I worked in a project like this. So I think you get the point, right? So what does the app mean right here? Something like this. It's not necessarily, some mobile app or whatever. And each and every app, it's like easier to distinguish the tests and the test suites, based on this parameter. So I think there's no need to explain more about the environments, given that these videos and these demos are for people who are either like senior automation QAs or just, QA leads and whatever, or manuals who want to switch to automation or who want to do both. It's just all up to you, really, what you get from these, from these demos. So based on the, assumed level of the specialists that I'm filming these videos for, I'm not gonna stop on some, I'm not gonna stop on some points, or speak too much and repeat myself too much, and state some obvious things. Sometimes it's really up to you to figure it out. Okay, so yeah, and let's continue with that. So we got env, we got app name, and we got suite name, and we got the browser. So these are like 4 key components that give our testing framework, or like the architecture of our testing framework, the most flexibility. Now let's go to the configuration. So we got the Cypress config.ts file, and we import the modules. So we take some environmental variables at first. These are basically the ones that we pass right here, or we can run the command as it is, not just an npm run, something like that. So we pass env, we pass app name, we pass suite name, and we got our spec pattern, which is basically like the path to our specs. And the value of this variable is dynamic. So and it depends. If we pass this suite name like all, which means like run all tests, like all tests for the given app name. If it is passed as all, then the spec name is gonna be like this, right? It's gonna like get a bit. This value is gonna be assigned to this variable. But if we pass some specific spec, if we pass some specific suite name, then this suite name is going to be taken and is going to be pushed to this value, which is going to be assigned to the spec pattern. So we got this test folder, and we got, for example, two test suites, right? And we got the test specs in each and every one of those. So we got the API and the end-to-end. So what that means is when I pass all, it's going to just take these masks. So it's going to take each and every test suite right here. But if I don't pass that, if I pass specific test suite, it's going to take that test suite name and substitute it here and pass it here, and then take this path and search for the test specs to run. Then we got to explicitly set the environmental variables, because we got the .env configurations right here, which we're going to be using. And Cypress is not an obvious framework for lots of stuff, but it allows us to do things. If we ask the right questions. So we gotta set the interface for the env variables, which is gonna be like the key string array, and it's gonna be like which is gonna have either string or undefined types. So what are we gonna do with that, right? So we're gonna take that and turn it to a const, assign it to a constant. So this is going to be a type of, this constant is going to accept this type of interface. And we also going to resolve the .env file path, given on the env that has been provided earlier on. So we take this .env, for example, stage, then we like concatenate it with the existing like .env.stage, right? So this is like mostly for local purposes, but if we take the CI/CD, we're gonna write and generate this, we're gonna take the GitHub secret and write that values of that secret to the .env.stage in our case, right? Or this value that we have passed via the environmental variables. The next thing is we're gonna parse that the .env config, and we're gonna assign the environmental variables like from that config to our environment, so to speak, right? So we're going to load them. So this depends on the environment that we have previously selected, right, or passed. If it's stage, it's stage. If it's prod, it's prod. Then we're going to have something which is like, we're also validating that we surely have passed the app name, because if we don't, we're going to throw the error that we didn't pass the app name, or like the subsystem, or the system name, or the component, like system component, or the microservice. I don't know, you may call it whatever you want. It doesn't change the essence of the thing. Another thing is that, if I remember correctly, but I may be wrong, it's like Cypress architectural limitation is that you got to start all, like each and every environmental variable with the Cypress -- prefix. So we're going to assign, all of those like object entries from the envars, which we have worked with previously. So it's basically going to take all of these variables right here from the .env, and it's going to assign it to the Cypress envars object. Because we are going to later on, we're going to push that object to our Cypress config, the config object, and thus it's going to set the environmental variables. So then we export the default defined config like object, or this is the method which includes these options. So we got the video settings, like the artifacts settings, the folders and whatever. You may go check it right here. I'm not going to stop here too much. We got the reporter, which is the Cypress mochawesome reporter. And we're also going to get to that at some point of this demonstration. Then we got the reporter options. There's not lots of those, but basically main things are like the report directory, whether we are overriding like the previous reports or not. And yeah, we got the HTML, we got the JSON, we got the embedded screenshots and inline assets. So I'm gonna show you how it looks like in a moment. And we got the end-to-end, like the main config, let's say properties, right? So we got this spec pattern that I've shown you like a little bit earlier on. So depending on this value, it's going to be passed to these as the value of this parameter and search for the specs based off of that mask. And we got the support file. This is an essential piece of Cypress like architectural setup, right? Because it basically, it loads some additional modules, should I say, like plugins and whatnot, like additional maybe hooks, because we got a couple of hooks right here, like global. This is like a global setup, something that if you take like Playwright, for example, it's also got that stuff right there. And it's also like named global setup, but it's named like end-to-end.ts by default in Cypress. But it doesn't matter to us. Then we got the base URL, which is also like retrieved from the envars because it's set dynamically depending on which end we have chosen. We got a few timeout values like globals. We got some blocked hosts for, this is just like for the demo purposes, if there is some annoying ad service or like analytics service running behind the scenes or like in the background, it's best to block the host of where those like requests are originating from to save yourself some performance, right? Okay. And we also got like a couple like the retries object, and we have one retry. So we retry the fail test one time in the run mode when we execute Cypress run, but we don't have this stuff for the open mode. It's easier to debug, I guess, and develop the tests, given that Cypress, the power and immense power, right, of the Cypress test runner itself. Then we got the setup node events, like nested method. So these like basically it handles Cypress plugins, and it's got some sort of hooks, right? Should I guess the event listeners? I don't know how to call that, but I know what these pieces of code actually do. So we push the the config.env file, we push the env variables right here, and we add some Chrome launch options. We also push those. We initialize the mochawesome reporter right here, and yeah, as I've said, we push some Chrome launch options right here. So then we return the modified config. So another important thing to mention here is this the end-to-end.ts support file, right? So this is a file where you put some global configuration methods or hooks or whatever. And I've got some packages right here, right? So we got the Cypress slowdown to emulate the user behavior a little bit. We got the mochawesome reporter, of course. We import these custom commands right here, and I'm gonna get to that in a minute. We instantiate this page manager. I'm also going to get to that in a minute because this is a part of like the page object model piece of configuration. So here we instantiate and we pass this slowdown like amount of slowdown, right, in milliseconds to emulate the user's behavior a little bit more. Then we got the screenshots configurations, like which and the screenshots are going to be taken like in case of failure, right? We're going to capture the full page and so on and so forth. We got a couple, like we extend the Cypress types because this is needed like for TypeScript setup and in order for that to work properly. So we need the current test interface with the title and title path. So we will be using that, for, I guess, for the screenshots. Yeah, so we also got the before each global hook and after each global hook, which is going to basically be running like before each and after each test. So we load the test, the full test name, we join those paths, we log the full test name path. This is mostly for the logs, but in the after each we got the decide.on command, which is gonna like take the screenshots with a specific titles or with a specific names, and store it in the project root in the screenshots folder in case when the test has failed. So basically this is the setup right here for the end-to-end.ts. So let me now demonstrate you the page object model implementation. Basically you've seen how the tests are structured. I mean the test specs. There's like absolutely nothing fancy about that. Like the test tab, which got the API and end-to-end right here. Listen this. So we got the pages folder for that, where the page objects are stored. And, we got the test app, like the app name for that as well. So the easiest way to structure that is via the application names, because we have, like as I mentioned, we have different tabs and so on and so forth. So we got the for each and every app, or like a system component or like a microservice or whatever, we got the base page, which contains common elements, common methods. Like in our, it's a class, like, right, and it's exported. So in our case, this is just for the demo purposes. The elements and how like the notation goes, you can pass, if you have dynamic elements, you may pass some variables into the selectors, and it's going to search for those very selectors. So, and then you got the visit, for example, like the visit method, in order not to to trigger the site.visit in each and every sub page or child page object. You got to trigger it once, and then extend this class with all these child classes, and trigger that from within those classes, right? And then we got the test page.ts. This is like an example of a test of a child class page object, right, which extends, just as I've said, it extends page object, and it extends its elements, and we like the notation for the elements is as follows. So we got a couple of methods to back ourselves up for the test spec. We're going to be checking the page title, make sure it exists, and we're going to be checking the banner text. Like, we're going to be passing this text as a string, of course, and making sure it exists and has this specific text that we just passed. Yeah. Now, so what is this freaky page manager that I was like mentioned a few times before? I try to, and I follow this implementation of the page manager utility, should I say, like in every test framework that is here and I've worked with. Playwright, WebDriver.io, and Cypress, of course, now as well. So it is pretty much simple, as in each and every other video. It is to avoid imports, like explicit imports of each and every page object into each and every spec, right? So this is kind of minimize this stuff, make it globally accessible. So what I mean by that, we import all the pages or the APIs, right? Because APIs are also like classes. So this is like API object model, sorta, right? So if I show it to you right here, so just as where we have, so we got like pages folder, the next thing we got the APIs folder, and the structure is the same, right? So we got the app name, and we got, for example, if we're using if that app uses GQL, we're going to be having like a specific, GQL page objects and their relations in the subfolder named GQL, actually, right? And if we have like the REST architecture, which is being used within this app, we're also going to have like the REST folder, and have like the the structure of the page objects right there. So it may seem a lot, but on the real project, which is like scalable, and if you're like if you're like a lead, an automation lead, or like a senior automation QA, you'll need that stuff. Most likely, you'll need that stuff in your projects. So once you get used to it, there's like absolutely nothing complex about it. Yeah, so it's also got these, the base page, or in our case, if in the case of API, it's like base.operations, because the GQL refers to the operations. And most of the times, like, APIs are just the operations under the hood, right? And this is the base class or the parent class, and this is like the child class, which extends the base class. Same as with the page objects, right? We got the base page and we got the test page, which extends the base page. So we import this stuff to the page manager class, and we explicitly set like those under the like, we initialize the instances of those classes inside of the like application name sub nested object, should I say, right? Just for the understanding, because we may have other applications or subsystems or whatever the hell, and we'll be using like different page objects and their relations, in regards for the specifics of that, other app, and then we wrap it into the constant, initializing the new like instance of this page manager class, and we export it. And there's still a few things that we need to do. So at first we got to declare it as a global, right? So the page manager must become global type, right? So we declare it as as pages, which is basically type of the page manager. In order for that to work, we got to create in the root of our Cypress folder, we got to create the global.d.ts file, which is like the global typization, should I say, right? So once we done that, let me close the unnecessary files. So once we've done that, just to show you within the test, basically, if we want to refer to any method from any page for any app or component, the notation is going to be, the syntax is going to be as follows, right? So we just gonna start, writing like with the pages. So we're gonna start as pages, then we're gonna chain off of it. Then we're gonna invoke the test app. This is like we are traversing through the object, so to speak. We retrieve the test page, or we go into the test page, and we invoke the visit method, which is this one, if we go to the definition of it. And same goes for check page title and like check banner text in this case. So this is pretty much how the page manager works. Now let me show you how the API works in this in the similar fashion, in a similar manner. So we got the APIs folder, we got our test app name as a nested folder, and we got the GQL if we're using the GQL API in this case. So we got the base.operations, because GQL usually has some operation names. So we're gonna have this convention, the naming convention for such modules as the follows. So and it's gonna feature basically the GQL base URL. It's gonna be retrieved from the Cypress.env, which the implementation of which you have seen like in the earlier sections of this video. And we got the this is like for demonstration purposes, we got the GQL like test operations, which extends the base operations so that we can navigate to, we can pass the base URL right there, which is this one, base URL, which I've just shown you. And so like the GQL operations, and I've done those on a real project, so but just for the NDA purposes I cannot show you any sensitive data, but so that you're understanding and aware of this stuff. So for each and every operational GQL method, it does something. So it has to be wrapped up in the method, right? And it's got to use the request method, where we pass the method type, the URL, and the body. So since this one doesn't have any specifically explicitly named operation, or it is not set anywhere. So this is like a Postman demo for the GQL API. I've taken this just to show you this stuff, how it works and so on and so forth. So it doesn't have any variables, but this doesn't mean anything. We may pass the things that we need to pass anyway. And it's got the query. And since each and every method is gonna be referring to some specific query structure, I tend, and I've did that with lots of tests on a large scale projects, I tend to keep the queries inside of every operation, because it's distinct. Basically, that's it. So if we need to pass something like in our case, we're gonna be getting some country information, and we're gonna, of course, by the country code. And even though there's no variables within the GQL method itself, we're still gonna be passing the country code, right? So otherwise, we won't be able to get anything. And of course, we got the headers, and that's it. As simple as it can possibly be. And then these operations class is also imported into the page manager instance, and I've just shown you how this stuff works. So this is basically like a global declaration of which allows us to invoke any method from within any either page object or the API, let's say class, right, or the API object model or the module. Right, so what do we have next? So just to show you this stuff, so what we basically do right there is we, as I've just said, we invoke the getCountry method, we pass the country code from the imported test data, and I'm gonna show you the test data in a minute, at least how I see the structure of the test data. And then we get the response, and we log some properties of this response, and then we have a list of assertions towards this response. Basically, that's it. So now I gotta say a few words about the test data structure. So the test data is probably the only thing that still needs to be explicitly imported into the specs. Otherwise, it just won't work, I guess. So it's not as easy as with the with the page objects or with the API objects. So let me just show you. We got the test data folder right here, and we got, for any given tests or, components. This is like you're actually free to, or more or less free to, structure it the way you want to. But just keep in mind that the larger your project is, the more like smart structure you gotta have inside of this. So either, categorize those by components. I mean, the test data modules categorize the test data modules by components, or categorize the APIs by either the API name or the component once again, right? So this is like the simplest examples, which may be upscaled up to thousands of tests per single project. So basically, we got like the header banner right here. This is the constant, right, which is going to return the header text from the Cypress page. And in case of the GQL query or the API test, we're going to have the constant of countries, and it's going to go by the name. In our case, it's Brazil. So we're going to be retrieving this information and actually making assertions against that. So as you can see right here, so we got the countries. We import that from the test app gql.data file. And the naming conventions are like .data.ts in the case of test data. So this is pretty important, because the larger your project gets, the easier it is, to get messed up a little bit. So naming conventions is pretty important thing here, as well as the overall structure. And I'm giving you the structure. I'm giving you the foundation for your projects, and you can apply those, to small to medium size, I guess even to larger projects in this case. I'm making assertions with the help of these test data values. Right, so let me show you the open command at first, right? And then we're going to run the same tests. So don't forget to cd into the Cypress folder. That's very important. Otherwise, you'll be bombarded with the messages that you forgot to do so, and it's not found, because given that this is somewhat of a monorepository, you can see the Playwright, you can see the WebDriver IO. I mean, you can see the other frameworks being present within the same repo, as well as some common stuff like GitHub workflows and common scripts. So yeah, just keep that in mind at all times. I also got that in the README files so that you don't miss it. Okay, so let me just type this command real quick. So we got the npm run. We got let's open the the Cypress runner for let's say for the end-to-end, right, at first, for the end-to-end test suite on staging environment. So only for this one. This is not going to be displayed. An npm run, open test app, end-to-end stage. As you've known, this is going to bypass the browser selection, because this is already passed as an argument, as I mentioned like in the very start of this video. And here I have the end-to-end example, which is like basically like it displays only the end-to-end suite, the suite that we have just passed as an argument. So let's run this thing real quick. So I got like two, should I say like two steps, or two separate tests, like two it blocks. The first one is, as you can see, it loads the environmental variables, the test name, and we got so it visits the base URL. It grabs it checks that it has the page has a title. It retrieves this banner h1, I mean the header, and it expects it to exist, and it grabs, it also asserts that the text is just as we are expecting it to be. And then it fails on purpose. It fails on purpose in order for me to show you how the reporting works within the Cypress. So we also got that piece, right? Okay, so this is as far as the end-to-end test goes. Now let's do the same for the API tests. But this time let's do it in production, right? So let's set prod so that you can see how it actually works, how it grabs and substitutes all the needed parameters or arguments, right? So let's open the runner. So yeah, as you can see, we now are able to observe only the GQL API example, so we don't have the end-to-end right here, because I didn't pass like that. I didn't pass that test suite name. I passed only the API, and let's run that. Yeah, cool. So we like query this URL, And then we return the response. As you can see, it's been logged right here as a pretty JSON. We also log the status. And here we got some, bunch of assertions right here. We can even assert the emoji actually. Yeah, so the page, the web view is not going to show us anything because this is like the API, and in case of API, we're going to need, to work more, with either with the network or with the console. I guess mostly with the console since we're triggering this stuff. So yeah, this is what it yielded. We can check the body and all that stuff. So something like that. So if you want to work with the raw data, and you will most likely have to work with the raw data. I'm going to be the first to tell you this. Yeah, because I've done that lots and lots and lots of times. So yeah, we have our bunch of assertions, and this is like, you may debug these tests, you may work on it, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's about it for the API local test run. Now let me show you how the reporting works. The Cypress report, the mochawesome report, works locally, like given the tests that we are running. So we have these, like as you've probably seen, we have for our CI run commands, we have the additional command which says like npm run clean reports, and this refers to this command, and it's gonna trigger the clean reports.js script. And this script is gonna search for the most frequently used directories and files. It's gonna join those with a base path, and it's gonna clear out those directories. So basically this is all it does. So it's gonna trash the assets, right? So I know we have that in the Cypress configuration. It said explicitly that we trash, we remove, we remove artifacts from the previous runs, such as screenshots and videos. But this stuff also does extend sorta, the base settings of this thing, of trashing the assets or trashing the artifacts, because we may have more and they are going to be hiding, so to speak, in some specific directories and paths. So that's why we need this stuff. So this it's gonna run the script at first, and then it's gonna run the actual tests or set of tests with the parameters that we are by now pretty much familiar with. So let me run the end-to-end at first. So let's wait just for a little bit, right? Okay, so it failed explicitly, and it retried, and as you can see in the logs, so if path doesn't exist, it's gonna show us that it doesn't exist. But if it exists, in this case, like the Cypress reports folder, is gonna remove the contents of that. Yeah, in order for that to be populated with the new artifacts and with a new report. So yeah, the test has run. You can see the results right here, and the HTML reporter has been created. So this is the piece that tells us about it. And this is our report location, the HTML file location. And I also have the report open command, which is basically gonna open the report right here locally. So let's see how it looks. So this one has passed. We got the artifacts right here, but we're only interested in the failed test, right? So we may filter that out if we have lots of those. And yes, you gotta understand that sometimes the failed test also is a result of some incorrect action in the previous test. So this may also happen depending on the complexity of your project and depending on the complexity of your tests. So we got this one failed on purpose, and we got a screenshot of the first attempt, and then we got a screenshot of the second attempt right here, and then we got the spec video recording. But since nothing happened, just other than the Boolean assertion, it's not going to show us anything, right? But it's it records the entire session. So that is how it looks locally. Same for the API. I'm not even going to show you that, right? Just because there's no need to. But just for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to run all tests at once. So both suites, end-to-end and API. So so that you can see how the overall report looks with all the results from both test suites. So let's run that. We got the npm run command right here for the all suites, and let's just wait a little bit. So I think it's gonna complete by now. Yeah, here it is. So we can see the API spec and the end-to-end example spec. And let's open the report as well. So as you can see, we got the end-to-end test suite and the GQL API test suite right here. Same logic applies. We got all the assets. We got, the artifacts, embedded into our reports, which is fine, which is just the thing that we expect, right? So that's about it for for everything local, right? So let's switch to the CI/CD piece right now. Okay, so let us run everything that we have just been talking about in the previous sections. Let us run it in the GitHub as a part of a GitHub Actions. So we got this workflow right here. Once again, I'm going to click this run workflow, and here we have all of these parameters, which is like branch, test app, like the test suites, which we may either pass as all or pass like comma separated specific titles. And the suggested like or available suites are listed right here. This is all configured through the YAML file. Then we select the browser and the environment, of course, like staging or production. So let's run it. Why are we waiting, right? Okay, here is our job, or like the GitHub run, right? So we already set the matrix, it's caching some dependencies, and then it's gonna trigger 2 jobs. So this is like what I like about it, because the official Cypress, so to speak, proposes the parallel runs sorta only if you pay them lots of money, but we don't have to. With this setup, we don't have to pay them lots of money because the matrix strategy allows us to kind of, split the tests, as you can see right here, into multiple jobs, which are going to be running in parallel. And it's really up to you how you split them, right? Because you may either split the end-to-end to 10 pieces, right? Or like the regression to 8 or 10 pieces, or you may split end-to-end to 3 pieces. It all depends on how you structure the project. So if you want to save time, this setup is definitely for you. Yeah, so here is our report URL, and we got our Slack message, so the app test with the test suite end-to-end test, and browser Chrome on the environment stage has finished with status of failure. And we got the logs link, and we got the report, the HTML report link as well. Here we also have the API tests, the API test suite, and this one succeeded, but it still has, the report. And the report has a custom URL, just like in any other, let's say, test automation framework. This is like very heavily parameterized and dynamically constructed. So let me first show you this stuff. So what's worth mentioning here is that this is the thing that we generate or create the .env file right here. The test run is the same, is identical, completely identical to our to the local test run, right? And the report should already be deployed and hosted. So we get the last build number. I'm going to tell you that in a minute when we have a code breakdown of the YAML file for the Cypress web test. But here we have the notify Slack. And basically, this is the new message for the past API tests, and yeah, but basically we have this report URL. And as you can see, this one is hosted on the GitHub pages via GitHub pages, and it is like completely the same structure and viewing, like an embedded artifacts and assets. Everything here is completely the same as in the local test runs. So we got a couple of attempts which have failed, and we got a screenshot per each of those attempts, and then we got the video recording at the end of it. So we got all that collected right here. And pretty much it is the same for the API, right? So as you can see, the URLs are different, and yeah, we got the API with all the assertions right here as well. So let us now do a YAML code breakdown, right? So here is our Cypress web test YAML file, and we got the workflow dispatch. We got the triggers described in the first section. So I commented out the cron, and I've commented out the push for now, since we are only demoing this stuff, and this is like the workflow dispatch, like manual test run or run on demand. Sometimes, people need to run things on demand just to make sure that everything's okay. Yeah, so there's our app name, there's our test suite, browser, and environment. Then we got the environment section with all the variables set right here. So based on what we provide within the test suite value or the test suite web values, is going to be pushed to the set matrix, to the set matrix job, and it's going to be like an array based on which then we are going to be triggering the test run jobs, like no matter how many how many test suites we pass It's either all or some separate pics of the test suite, of the test suites. Then we got the cache in depths, and not gonna really stop there because we cache the node modules, some Cypress cache right here. This is pretty much, it's not interesting. We do npm installs, dts node, we check and verify that Cypress is installed, and then it is installed correctly. Then we have our run test, and this is pretty much the most important job right here. It needs the set matrix and it needs the cache depths. So we set the working directory so that we don't have to cd to do it like we do like locally, cd Cypress, and that we do not have to run this command like as a part of script for every step in this YAML file. So we got our matrix strategy right here. Then we restore the cache. We install the dependencies. We create the .env file right here, given based off of the value of the environment, like input value that we have selected, right? So if it's prod, then we're going to take the secrets, which contains all those values from the .env prod file, and we're going to write it into the .env.prod file. This is like for security purposes. Same thing is going to be done for the staging, like for .env.stage. So if you know, and any other config name that we see fit, if we have any other environment that that is being used. Yeah, the next thing is that we have we have the run test step right here, and here we got our the npm command, which corresponds to the one of those, or to the command like structure of these commands in the package.json, which is basically we just run the clean reports command and pass all the the inputs from the workflow dispatch, for that matter, or defaults if we haven't selected anything specifically, just like here. So the next step is where we get the latest build number. This is needed for us to construct the report URL. So we got the slug, which has the sci prefix. It takes the metrics suite name, then it takes the browser name, it takes the environment name, it actually tries to invoke the GitHub curl. It tries to get the contents and check whether this slug already exists in the GitHub pages branch, because it's gonna publish the report to the GitHub pages branch. Well, like obviously we don't need that to be published to the master branch, because that would completely destroy our repository structure. So that's why we need a separate branch to do that. So it's gonna it's gonna check whether we have that folder out there, and it's gonna retrieve the numeric values from that, and if there are none, it's gonna echo the message that directory exists but is empty. It's gonna start with 1, right? If there is none, if this directory doesn't exist, it's gonna echo that no builds found yet. So starting with 1. But well, obviously if the build or the previous builds exist, it's gonna take that the latest value or the largest value, increment it by 1, and that's gonna be our current build number. This is basically this little piece right here, and this is the slug. So Cypress prefix, end-to-end tests, this is the suite name, Chrome is the browser name, stage is the environment name, and this is basically the build number. And then it's gonna deploy the suite report to the GitHub pages, right? So it's gonna take the Cypress reports as a published directory, and the destination directory is gonna be the slug and the build number in the GitHub pages branch. And then it's gonna notify the Slack. It's gonna construct the report URL based on those values. And basically job run result, here's the conditional logic, is gonna post either one of these messages. This is for the failed ones, this is for the past ones, and we also have the canceled, but I don't think we have it right here. We should probably have it for some other, let's say for some other frameworks. Yeah, just for example, for the WebDriver IO. So the logic for the different frameworks is the same here. It's just gonna publish the message based on the test results. So this is for the canceled run. Let's go back to our Cypress alerts. So yeah, I think I've said enough, and this positively wraps up this demo. I encourage you to take this as a template and trying to implement this on your project if you need that, or if you are just learning automation, this can be an amazing like foundation for you, whether you want to try like Cypress or Playwright or WebDriver IO. Totally up to you. I got the setups for all three. So yeah, feel free to refer to this repo. Feel free to try and implement that, and just try to have at least some fun with it, right? In the process of creation. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, peace out.